And as the lockdown of 21 days hits the country, no one has been more affected than daily wage laborers and those living at the margins in the informal sector. What should be done for them? Joining me now is the former Finance Minister P. Chidambaram, who has suggested a 10-point package for those who live below the poverty line. Mr. Chidambaram, your package really focuses on the urban poor, the marginal farmers, and you are calling for a massive government support for them. Do you believe that we have the headroom for a massive 5 to 6 lakh crore package for the urban poor today?
Absolutely. This is not only for the urban poor, it is also for the rural poor. Especially the first 3 points address the rural poor. So if you read carefully, it will cover practically 90 to 95% of the poor. Some people will still be left out, but we'll have to find ways for that. The total expenditure budget of the central government and all the state governments put together is about 70 to 75 lakh crore rupees in 2020-21. Out of this 70 to 75 lakh crore rupees, we can easily garner 5 to 6 lakh crore rupees. This is eminently doable, and we have done the math also where to find the resources. I have not spelt it out today, but that I will do in due course. It has already been indicated in a column by Praveen Chakravarti in the Hindu on Monday.
I saw that, Mr. Chidambaram. I saw your 10 points. You are talking about the rural poor and the urban poor. You're talking of doubling wages under Manrega. You're talking about doubling wages under the Kisan, Pradhan Mantri Kisan scheme. You're talking specifically about providing support for daily wage laborers. Some state governments are already doing it. Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, Maharashtra, Delhi are saying that they will provide specific monthly emoluments to daily wage laborers. Do you believe in that sense that is essential for them in a way to be provided some kind of a safety net because of the impact of coronavirus?
Absolutely. If state governments have started doing it, I compliment them. They'll have to top it up to reach the amount that I've specified. What I have said, in my view, is the absolute minimum. Therefore, if the state governments are already spending a part of that, the burden to that extent has already been assumed by the state governments, and I compliment them.
In a sense, Mr. Chidambaram, you have been advocating this lockdown for a long time. Even before the Prime Minister made the address, you have been calling for a lockdown. So you believe that lockdown is necessary, but with the lockdown, what you are calling for is an element of compassion. So coercion must come with compassion to ensure that those at the bottom of the pyramid are protected from an extended lockdown.
I believe a lockdown is necessary, but a lockdown is not sufficient. If people are locked down, if people have to stay home, it costs money to stay home. I mean, it might appear counterintuitive, but you need money to stay home. And those who are daily workers, those who are agricultural workers, self-employed, those who have lost their jobs, or who are likely to lose their jobs. Now, where will they find the money? The only way the money can be provided is for the rest of the country to provide the money. And the rest of the country has already paid taxes to the government. Government has other revenues, and government must provide the money. So, lockdown is necessary, but a program like, I'm not saying adopt it in total, a program like my 10-point program is absolutely necessary to make the program sufficient.
You know, one of your 10 points is all registered employees to maintain current levels of employment and wages, guarantee to such employees who do so that the wages of the employees will be reimbursed by the government within 30 days of employment. We are already finding layoffs at the moment. We're already finding salary cuts, layoffs, daily laborers in particular,
Yes.
Contractual laborers are being asked to go home. So do you really believe this is possible?
Whether it's layoff or whether it is no work, stay home, it amounts to the same. The worker has to be paid wages. Now, employers must be told by law, by notification, you have to maintain current levels of employment. It doesn't really matter whether they are working or not working. Anyway, there's a lockdown. Somebody has to pay their wages. So the employer must be assured that if he pays the wages for the period of lockdown, he will be reimbursed. That assurance, that guarantee will ensure that about 90% of the employers, at least for the first 2, 3, 4 months, will continue to pay wages. We can review the situation after 3 months, but immediately that assurance is necessary for every registered employer, whether it's registered under the Factories Act or the Industrial Disputes Act,
Yes.
or the Shops and Establishment Act, or the Cooperative Societies Act, whichever act, as long as he's registered, he has to maintain current levels of employment and wages.
You know, number of small businesses that I've spoken to are saying that their cash flows, in a sense, will exhaust themselves come early April. So they're not going to find it easy to actually provide the cash to particularly, I repeat again, daily wage laborers, construction companies in particular, those working in new projects, say that that will be a struggle.
No, I'm afraid you're mixing up two things. My guarantee of wage reimbursement applies only to registered employers. It certainly doesn't apply to somebody who employs a daily worker on a casual or temporary or a sporadic basis. For the daily worker, for the self-employed, for the agricultural worker, there are the first 3 points. And then there's the point for the urban poor. So I think there are two different categories. If you go through the categories, you will note that I've carefully identified each category. There will be some overlap. I've recognized that, I've said so. There will be some leakage, there will be some duplication, but it doesn't matter. In the kind of crisis that we face, I would allow even a 10-15% margin of error.
You know, you've even spoken about GST. You have said that the GST, cut GST rates by 5% on all wage goods, essential goods and services, and all goods of mass consumption for the period 1st April to 30th June 2020. Now, the government has, in a sense, indicated that they may be willing to provide some kind of relief, but you are saying go much beyond that.
But 5% is not a very large amount. It will be 2.5% for the central GST and 2.5% for the state GST. Now, anything below that is ridiculous. Therefore, I think across the board, we have to cut GST for 5% by 5%, and I say 3 months. So effectively, it amounts to 1.25%.
You know, you seem to be talking about, and this was also referred to in the Hindu article, for a new deal, that this is an opportunity in a way, like what America had post 1930s, the Great Depression. In this case, give us a new deal post-corona. You believe that is necessary to initiate both economic recovery as well as provide some kind of protection to the poor who suffer the most. Am I correct?
You see, New Deal is a well-known phrase, and therefore Praveen used that phrase in his column. America has set apart $2 trillion. They're a rich country. England has set apart $300 billion. Many European countries, much, much smaller than India, have set apart $300 billion US. Now, my 5 lakh crore package amounts to about $70 billion US. And we should set it apart. It's exactly 6% of India's total government expenditure in a whole year. What are we balking about? What are we quarreling about?
Is this the missing gap, you think, at the moment? Because the lockdown was announced last night. It's a 21-day lockdown. It's led to some element of panic buying, which was natural, some would suggest. But do you believe over the next 3 weeks things will get better, or do you fear that they could get worse?
You see, I can't predict how they will go. The point is, I was very, very disappointed and to some extent very upset when the Prime Minister did not end his speech by saying, here is a 3, 4, 5 point plan to provide livelihood to to the poor. He should have said that at the end of his speech. I think they're taking too much time. I'm not even sure whether the Economic Task Force has been constituted. The Ministry of Finance was, until Monday, disowning any such idea and said we had no idea, asked the PMO. Be that as it may, now that they have announced and the FM has announced an economic package is coming, let it come tonight. Let it come by 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, let it come tonight. If it does, then I think a lot of people will be relieved. There will be panic buying on the first or second day, but I think panic buying will stop once people realize that the shops are open and the groceries and the fruit and vegetables and the milk continues to be available and medicines are available. It will take about 24, 48 hours for people to get used to a total lockdown. But I think a total lockdown is an absolute imperative. I've held this belief for nearly 2 weeks now. Having announced a total lockdown, let's not make it a failure. Let's make it a success by providing livelihood support to the poor.
One of those livelihood supports for urban poor is take the Jan Dhan accounts, you're saying, with the urban branches of banks and transfer a sum of rupees 6,000 into the bank account of each beneficiary. So you're saying identify the people and transfer 6,000 rupees into their bank accounts.
They have already been identified. Just look at the Jan Dhan accounts and the previous avatar, the no frills account, opened in the urban branches of our banks. Confine it to the urban branches. So they already identified. Those accounts have already been seeded with Aadhaar. Transfer the money immediately into those accounts, number one. Number two, offer 10 kilogram of rice or wheat free in the ration shop and arrange for delivery, or arrange for them to pick it up over the next 21 days. So I think cash and food will relieve their anxieties to a large extent. We can always review it. These are not one-shot measures. These are reviewable measures. They must be periodically reviewed, and I'm sure the government knows how to review measures as we go along.
Do you think the time has come for an all-party meeting where precisely some of the issues that you've raised in this 10 points, that this is not a moment for government versus opposition, this is a moment for all of us to stand unitedly and find solutions, including the political class? Should the Prime Minister call an all-party meeting now?
You have touched a raw nerve. You have touched a raw nerve. It is amazing that the Prime Minister called a meeting of all Chief Ministers only on March 20, and he has not yet called a meeting of the leaders of the opposition parties. The minimum you should do is call a meeting of the opposition parties and take them into confidence and ask them for ideas. Who knows, they may have some sensible ideas. And I think to raise this bamboo curtain or iron curtain between the government and the opposition, and the government saying, I and I alone will deal with the crisis, it's neither fair nor democratic. I think the Prime Minister should immediately call the leaders of every opposition party. How many will attend? 30, 40, and that's doable, and it must be done.
Well, it can be done in today's day and age through video conferencing as well. But I just want to ask you then in conclusion, economic recovery, is that something that you see on the horizon, or you believe that must now be put in pause mode? The first focus is providing this safety net for the poor.
No, there's no economic recovery on the horizon. I'm glad even the Prime Minister acknowledged that there's no economic recovery on the horizon. He did it in a very implied way. We have already slid to 4.7% in the last quarter. We will slide further, but that's not to blame the government. That's because of coronavirus. The world economy will slow down, according to the IMF, by up to 2% in 2020. Let's assume that our economy will also further slow down by another 2%, which means we will go down to about 2.7 or 3%. That's okay. Nobody is going to blame the government today for the slide from 4.7 to 3. And therefore, keep aside the question of economic recovery. Now the question is, we should not slip into a recession. we should not allow people to protest or indulge in social protest because they are hungry, because they don't have enough food, they don't have enough cash. Therefore, the best way to make the lockdown a success is to put cash in one pocket and food in another pocket. You do cash and food, you will find that the people respond to this draconian lockdown, which is absolutely necessary, I agree, to this lockdown with greater enthusiasm.
My final question to you, Mr. Chidambaram, you've been in public life now for almost 4 or 5 decades. Is this perhaps the biggest crisis for the Indian state in a way? Something where we don't know really what tomorrow brings?
It is. It is bigger than the migration crisis that happened in 1947. It is bigger than the famines that occurred from time to time. It is bigger than the tsunami of 2004. It is bigger than the economic crisis that hit us in 2008 and in 2013. In fact, it's bigger than all of them put together. In America, they say it's bigger than the Depression and the international financial crisis put together. Let's understand the magnitude. I'm afraid 8 out of 10 have not yet grasped the magnitude and the gravity of the crisis. I'm not exaggerating. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm afraid all my reading, all my information points the other way. This is the biggest crisis that India has faced. This is the crisis that affects everybody in India, and therefore we must rise to the crisis as one nation, one people.
Mr. Chidambaram, you're calling it the biggest crisis that post-independence India has ever faced. Those are very, very strong words, but also words of caution there. Mr. Chidambaram, I appreciate your joining us.
I want to request you one thing.
Yes.
I want you to run the 10 points on your screen and invite a debate. I'm sure there are very, very wise and intelligent people who can improve upon the 10-point plan. This is just a beginning, but you must take a decision within the next 24 hours.
That's right, Mr. Chidambaram. We are running those 10 points. For now, I appreciate your joining me here on the news today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kamal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.